What does it take to have more confidence, to love yourself more powerfully? Well, in today's episode, we're going to discuss that and more with our guest, Anastasi. Welcome to Thriving Launch with Louise Congdon and Kamala Chambers, this show for heart-centered entrepreneurs who want it all.
5 days a week, we bring you different segments to inspire you to live a life of freedom. We interview the leading experts in the field of business, health, and love. Be sure to check out Training Tuesdays, where we give you a clear action plan to grow your own business.
Do you have a product or service that you would like to sell online? Or maybe you've been thinking about it, but you're reserved to do it because you need a website, you need complicated systems, and you need to spend money? Well, I've created a completely free course that teaches you how to use Facebook in a purely organic way. This means no ads and no money are needed. You can use Facebook completely free. So head on over to thrivinglaunch.com. Opt into my Profit from Social Media course. I'm going to teach you the free methods to using Facebook to make money today. Today's guest has worked with the best of the best, ranging from Hollywood celebrities, worldwide and globally known musicians across the world. Anastasi, author of The Voice of Your Dreams, as well as the creator of the Superior Singing Method, a hit program that teaches you how to sing and how to use your voice powerfully. Today, Anastasi joins us. Aaron, welcome to Thriving Launch Podcast. Are you ready to launch?
Yes, Luis, thank you so much. It's an honor for me to be on your show. I love you and I love what you do. So let's do this.
Well, I hope by the end of the interview, you also love me and what I do. No, I'm not attached to that. You don't have to love me. But I would love to hear about you and what you're up to. I know that you do some fantastic work. You have this incredible book out about your journey through kind of starting at the bottom, your hero's story of going all the way to the top. And I'd love to hear, what is some of the foundational pieces for you that have brought you where you are today?
Yeah, I guess for me, if I think back to, well, if I go way back, I won't spend too much time way back, but I grew up in poverty, in pretty abject poverty. And during that time, I'd taken on, everybody talks about the scarcity mindset. Everybody knows what that is now, but I lived that for a long time. And I took that poverty and get what I can and that survival kind of mode into my adulthood. And it wasn't serving me very well. And I'd had some successes, mostly failures, but some successes here and there, but I wasn't able to really find any sustainable success or anything that really lasted. And I was at a point, so several years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I remember sitting with my life coach, and I was just at a point in my life where I'd had it. I was just really frustrated and really just depressed and sad, just because I felt like I kept getting the same types of results over and over again that I didn't want. It was like the carpet was being pulled out from under me. Like I would have this opportunity, I would work toward it and looked like it was going to pan out, looked like it would pan out, and then the rug would be pulled out in front of me. And it happened so much and so much in that pattern that I was like, I've got to be complicit in this somehow. Like I'm doing something to create this. It's got to be. So, fast forward to when I was sitting with my coach that day 6 or 7 years ago. And I remember I was complaining to him about all this stuff. And he said, who would you have to be in order to get the results that you want in life? And I was like, what are you talking about? First of all, like, you mean, what do I have to do, right? Because for me, it was about hard working. I was always fighting this idea of, I won't be poor, so I'm going to fight and I'm going to work hard and I'm going to do all that. But what I didn't understand was that my mind is like a GPS system. My thoughts and my beliefs are like a GPS system that is for me, I feel like it was broken in such a way that it kept getting me to the same place over and over again. So it didn't matter if I tried faster or new strategies. It was something in my mindset. The GPS system itself needed a recalibration. And so when he asked me, who would you have to be, not in order to get the results you want, that was the beginning of a search and a journey for me where I began recalibrating my belief system, my thoughts, and what I thought was possible. And that shift of my way of being actually included some radical results. We were talking about before the show, but within a year, I had gone from literally barely making it financially to making six figures, creating seven-figure business, a stagnant relationship that wasn't really going anywhere, to now being married to that same woman and having just a fun, adventurous marriage, and actually pursuing the dreams that were the most scary to me. That now it's what I'm doing more of today.
This is just so amazing and incredible to have you on here today, especially because it's funny how you, our guest right now, is reflecting something that I'm being reminded of that is so important, that the reality that we're seeing in front of us, our thoughts and the way that we're behaving and like you said, being creates this reality. But there's this whole catch, and I want to ask you. People talk a lot about being, like, right? If you want to be happy, then be happy, and be it. If you believe it, be it. And I hear that, and I know some of the people in the audience are like, well, how do you be something? What do you do to be something, Aaron?
Yeah, and that's because it's so just can be so cliche and so surface level. If let's say my girlfriend, well, I'm married now. Let's say my wife wanted a divorce or something, and Luis or Kamala, you're just like, just be happy. I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, get out of my face. It's like that doesn't help. So what is this actual shift of being? For me, it had mostly to do with like unearthing and redesigning my belief system, my thoughts. And so one of the chapters of my book is called What a Racket. And in that chapter, I talk about this idea of these rackets that we run on ourselves. Our rackets are basically like all the belief systems that keep us small and keep us from living the bigger life that we would live. And they're usually based on some form of complaint. So if I go back to that time, my primary complaint was somewhere along the lines of, I don't have what it takes, to be successful as an actor or as a musician or as an entrepreneur. I don't have what it takes. So this was my primary belief. I don't have what it takes. And then I had a few other complaints surrounding that. It's all about who you know, or it's, you need money to make money. It was like all these like cliche beliefs that I really did believe. So it kept me out of action. So the racket structure for me is, if once I find out, and I take my clients through this, once I find out what somebody's complaint is, then I've got a good idea about what their belief system is. And I say, and walk them through that. Okay, with this complaint, the next step is like, okay, when you have this thought and this complaint, how do you feel? How do you react in your body? Like, what goes on? So for me, I don't have what it takes. My reaction would be, it would just shut me down, and I wouldn't go for I'd just play safe and play not to lose rather than to play to win. I would not try to do the hard work of what it takes to get that thing I want. So there are all these things that's producing in me. So that's kind of the first level. But then here's when it gets a little crazy. The third question we try and find out is, if you were getting certain payoffs out of believing this, like if you were believing this on purpose, why might that be? And this is what I was talking about earlier. I was complicit somehow in creating this situation for me, because the results I were getting were a perfect reflection of the system, the belief system that I was living in. My life was perfect according to what I wanted, according to what I believed. So what are the payoffs? If there are payoffs for me to believe I don't have what it takes, I mean, first of all, I don't have to have what it takes. I've got a scapegoat right out of the gate. I don't have to have what it takes. I don't have to do the hard work of figuring it out. I don't have to crank up my want to level so much that the how to becomes obvious. I don't have to risk looking like a failure, so on and so forth. So once I get an idea of what the payoffs are and how I'm complicit in this situation, that helps me lock on to a little more reality. And then the final thing I take them through is, okay, what is this costing you? When you choose to believe this thought, what is it costing you? And for me, it was costing me a better financial situation. It was costing me a better relationship. It was costing me a real pursuit of my dreams. Am I making sense here?
Oh, definitely. And I love how on that first level, you really brought it down into the body. How is it affecting me? What is the experience like living in my body with that? And I think a big thing with mindset is that it can get so heady for a lot of people that, I just have to change the tape or whatever. But if you actually bring more awareness into the moment, like you're talking about it, there's really powerful things that happen. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that from you.
Yeah. What I came to find out is that my performance, like everything that I do, every action that I take, is based on how I perceive my world. And so And the way that I perceive my world is based on mostly on the language, the conversation that I'm having with myself in my mind. And if I want to shift the conversation in my mind, the primary thing that I could do is have a declaration or a vision about what I want to change and what I want to be different in my life. And the first thing that comes to mind is my wife and I. When we got married, we were $30,000 in debt. And by we, I mean I was $30,000 in debt, and then we got married, so we were $30,000 in debt. And I had lived with this voice in my head that said, for about 10 years, I can't get out of debt. I don't. Who can afford to pay off $30,000? All I could afford to pay is $139.11, which was my college tuition payment for forever. But when we got married, so that thought of I can't do any more than this, it affected my actions and what I pursued. And then we decided, okay, we're going to live into a new story because we're living in these stories and our actions are a result of the stories we're living in. So I'm going to create a new story, a declaration, a vision of what I'm going to go for. And so we decided we're going to be debt-free out of $30,000 of debt in 9 months. And we didn't have any idea. At the time, we weren't making hardly any money, but we just made a declaration. We wrote it down. We started telling our friends to be accountable. And we started moving in the direction of creating a new future because we live into the future that we see coming toward us. And if that future is a repackaged version of the past or this jacked up GPS system, we're just going to get that future over and over again. But we can rewrite the future with language and declarations and commitments and say, this is what we're up to. This is what we're going after. And writing it down, that's such an important part of it. And then that creates a new future to live into. And as we live into that future, we see other opportunities and possibilities that didn't seem to previously exist because we were blind to them because of our belief system. So after 9 months, my wife and I got out of $30,000 in debt, and it had a lot to do with just creating that vision and that commitment and really driving toward it.
Aaron, this is so empowering. We're listening to somebody who has built several six-figure businesses, runs seven-figure businesses, hangs out with some of the people in Hollywood. He's introduced me to some people to come on the show so you guys can find out about their keys to success. It's just so amazing to hear you talk about the mindset piece, and then you have a lot of the success to back it up, but you've gone through your trials and your struggles. So, there's this aspect too that we get that you're also really human. You're married, you're running businesses, you work on yourself constantly. You said a few different things there that are really important to me. And there was a few things also that kind of weren't completely said. So one of the things you did say was you write down these declarations. What is the power of writing goals down or what is the difference between my goal is to make $100,000 a year? How does that compare to a declaration? Can you explain that to me a little bit?
Yeah, so the declaration is great. That's what kind of creates that new future. We live into the future we see coming toward us. So that begins to paint that future. Well, what happens, there's a lot of scientific evidence of when we write things down, because our mind, there's so much chaos oftentimes in our mind, or certainly in my mind. I can't speak for you, but in my mind, there's a lot of chaos all the time. And so when I just make a declaration, that's helpful. That gets me down the road. But when we take something and we actually write it down and post it and look at it on a regular basis, it begins to reframe the mind. The brain starts seeing it as something that's real to go after. I mean, well, think about even the credit card companies or anybody that's sending you a bill. They write it down, they type it out, and they send it to you because they know that once it's written down and you're holding it in your hand, it seems real to the brain. It's like, I've got to take care of this thing. And it's the same thing. I never really did that with my own goals and dreams for a long time. But when we write it down, and then the other thing, not just writing it down, because that begins to make it real, but start telling people, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm going after. And then this is another level of using the ego against itself, because we don't want to look stupid in front of other people. We don't want to be shamed in front of other people. And so when I start telling people, it kicks in a whole nother level of motivation of getting this thing done, because there's so much possible for us. But when we don't employ all the resourcefulness that we have oftentimes because of the limiting voice that tells us, hey, don't even try, this isn't going to work out, that business, that industry is already too oversaturated, come on, you're not smart enough for that, you're behind, there's something wrong, there's all these limiting voices which kind of keep us smaller.
that is really powerful about speaking a goal. And I know Kamala has a comment, so we'll go to her in a moment. That piece about speaking your goals or telling other people your goals or visions is really powerful. And then there is a whole kind of another part of you that can kick into gear. But I've also found that sometimes just by stating a goal, even though you don't know how to get to it, and it's almost even a little bit like nerve-wracking to say it out loud to somebody, there's even power in that. I mean, and maybe you won't get that. There's this process sometimes between speaking a goal and having it show up, and sometimes it's easy to kind of feel beat up in between that time. But Kamala, I know you had a question there.
Yeah, this is such an important piece of what you're talking about, is being able to work towards the goal, just like getting out of that $30,000 debt. Now that's seems like an impossible task for a lot of people, but now I don't know about this statistic or anything, but what I always tell myself, this is the story that I have running, is that knowing what I want is 90% of it. Because if I know what I want and I just stay focused on the task and keep working towards it, I get it every single time. Now, I think that happens because I know what I want and because I stay focused and know that I will get it if I keep, that may sound like kind of selfish or bratty, like I know I'm going to get everything I want, but it certainly works out for the best.
Kamala, I understand that point of view too. It sounds weird, like I get whatever I want, but that's been my experience. And I love what you mentioned, because this is the declaration. Before we can make a declaration or a commitment, we need to get really clear about what it is that we want, and locking into what it is that we want. I believe, and what I talk a lot about in my book, is that success is staying on the path. This idea of progressively realizing this worthy ideal. So when we're on the path, we're gonna reach our goals. It's getting derailed from the path constantly by different things. And I'm all about the limiting voices and our negative self-talk. That's what I mostly talk about. I think that's what ends up derailing us often. But once we get really clear about what we want, we make a declaration, write it down, start telling people, and we stay focused on it, just doing small things daily, eventually really big things occur. Like we think we want to take this huge leap into the future, and I want all this huge success, but it generally doesn't work for people that way. It's just this steady plodding, like the tortoise and the hare. When we're the tortoise and every day we just kind of steady plod, and we know we're really clear about what we want. My book is like an Amazon bestseller now and has been on the list for 5 weeks or something. I have no idea how to do that. A lot of my clients are like, well, I don't know how to do this. The how-to doesn't matter. Once you crank up the want-to enough and get clear enough about what you're after and steady plot and stay focused on it day after day, these results just show up. The results are none of our business, really, but it's just this steady plotting. But the results show up, and it's almost like magic.
Magic is the right word, absolutely.
This really brings me to a question, and something that you've told me is that you read your declarations every day. Because, earlier I was starting to go into this question, but it felt a little early. Like, what do we do? It's kind of like going to this Anthony Robbins thing, right? People get all jacked up, and I know everybody's listening and going, okay, I can write some declarations down. I can get clear on some goals that I have. Awesome, I can do that. Yeah, this is getting me excited. But now there's a time between that mind, this new kind of idea of you, and then there's tomorrow and the next day, and bringing that into each day so that, like you said, you're kind of building, you're plotting, right? And when we're plotting, we're setting seeds down, then we've got to water them. And one of the ways that I've heard that you water the seeds is you have some reminders or something that you read on your phone. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've got actually one of the chapters of my book is called The Truth About You. And it's just this practice that I started that I never heard anybody else talk about. Not that it's completely new. There are other ideas around it, but it's something that I started that just worked for me. And so it's called The Truth About You. And before I even get into it, I want to say a little caveat that this isn't just a positive affirmation exercise. Like generic positive affirmations, they just don't help me. Like, oh, I'm going to do great, or this is going to be awesome, or there's some that connects with me a little bit. But here's what's different about this Truth About You list is I write things that people say about me that I respect. And so that's part of it, is when somebody says something to me that really connects with me, somebody that I respect, that they wouldn't have any reason to like blow smoke or whatever, I take that and I put it in this truth about you list. And I listen for things that are specific truths that counter specific lies that I believe. I believe that, we'll know the truth and the truth will set us free. So that principle to me is knowing a very specific truth to counter a very specific lie. So let me just give you one example. I've got one of my buddies. He's a really, really strong leader. I respect him a lot. And anytime I'm thinking, oh, I'm a fraud, that imposter syndrome, and I'm a bad coach, and what am I doing? I shouldn't be writing. Nobody cares what I have to say. One of the things I read, I've got literally dozens of these on this list, is a quote that he says, "You systematically create success around you and inspire the same in others." You see, so it's a very specific thing that he said that can counter very specific lies that I have. So like I said, I've got 25 of these in my phone that counter the different lies that I tend to believe, because like we're talking about right before we hit record, is that I've had a lot of different successes in my life, and that's great, but it doesn't get rid of my own limiting voices and my own thoughts of when I wake up in the morning, oftentimes with this flood of fearful thoughts of like, you're going to lose everything and you can't sustain the success and you're becoming irrelevant, like all these limiting voices that come into my mind. So I actually read this truth about you list. It's just in the notes section of my phone. I read it every single morning when I wake up. It takes like 5 minutes, 8 minutes, and it recenters me on what's more true about me than you're dumb, you're going to fail, you always fail, you can't keep this up. All those thoughts that come in my mind, this recenters me on what is at least as true, but more true than those negative thoughts.
I wonder about something, because here's an example. I've really wanted to be a better human and just be the best human I could be. And I really latched on to the limiting beliefs in the beginning of this journey. And I found them. I'm not good enough was a big one. And that one I just kept coming back to. How much do you focus on the limiting beliefs? Is it I identify it and then I automatically replace it when I'm aware that it's there with one of these other beliefs?
I haven't found much success in just like trying to replace it. Here's where I found the most success is when I take people through this racket structure. What I find is that when I could see what my actual thought is, like if I don't have what it takes, I don't go around thinking I don't have what it takes. But when I get clear about, oh, this is what's going on, I say, okay, then I look at it and even write it down and say, oh, this is a thought that I believe. And then when I start doing inquiry on that thought through this racket structure or any kind of inquiry, I begin to see what's more true about that. So one of the questions that I ask people, even at the end of the racket structure, is what is as true or more true than this thought? So what's as true or more true than I don't have what it takes? Well, I've got, the equivalent of 3 master's degrees from Princeton. I've got these 7-figure business. I've got, so what is as true or more true? And I start thinking about that. And as I think of these things, I'm like, that's kind of an absurd thought. It doesn't mean I didn't believe it and I won't believe it again. But in this moment, my mind now can see what's more true about that thought. So it's not like, oh, that thought just goes away. But I find that when I inquire about these thoughts over the course of the next couple of days, I can't let go of a thought. I don't think it's possible for anybody to let go or just replace a thought, because these thoughts are universal in our mind. I mean, everybody's thought has had the thought in my mind, I'm going to fail, or everything's going to go wrong, or I don't have what it takes, or there's something wrong with me. These are universal thoughts that we can't just let go. But once we inquire about them, they begin to let go of us. And then another key thing that I talk about in my book is whatever that thought is and wherever that fear is, if we just get busy getting in action toward that thing, like when I was writing my book, nobody's ever going to read it. Why are you writing this book? You're never going to finish it. Nobody will ever publish it, like those thoughts. But then when I just said, you know what, I'm just going to spend 3 minutes writing. I don't care about those voices. And after about 3 minutes of writing, the voices began to be silenced in my mind in that moment. And then 2 hours later, I emerged like, oh, wow, I love writing. And last thing I'll say is Van Gogh has a quote. He says, if you hear a voice in your head say, you cannot paint, then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced.
Wow. Thank you so much for being on the show, Aaron. You've just given us all such beautiful nuggets to take away and kind of start to reprogram all those old stories we have going on. So it's been really fantastic having you on the show. as always, we're going to make sure that we include everything that Aaron's talked about, all his resources, how to get in touch with him and get his book and all of that. It's all going to be at thrivinglaunch.com. So head on over there. Thanks so much for listening to the Thriving Launch podcast.
You've been listening to the Thriving Launch podcast. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure to head over to thrivinglaunch.com. We'll see you there.
On our next episode, we're going to be speaking with Michaela Baum about how to increase pleasure, how to pleasure a woman, and how to increase relaxation for more peace in your life.